And Zelensky will visit the White House this Monday in what is considered the second part of this offensive. That is, of this diplomatic offensive, so to speak, of this diplomatic push that is being attempted, in which during this meeting they will meet face to face. The leader of Germany, this German chancellor, who by the way has been a bit tougher and more critical of Trump than the previous one, Olaf Scholz, for example. We're also going to be seeing this Limi, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the same one. What's the name of the Prime Minister of Italy? The one and only Giorgia Meloni? Not Macron, right? Marut himself, the Secretary General of NATO, Alexander Stubb, the President of Finland himself, the President of the European Commission. So European leaders will be there, or at least a good number of them, and obviously the Ukrainian President himself, Volodymyr Zelensky. In a few more hours, as you know, they will be there in, what's it called? At the White House in the United States, right? So, faced with this, Zelensky aims to resolve the external crisis and end the war so he can say he's handing over a country at peace. Let elections and a new president come, whatever happens, let it happen. But in the end, well, it's already being guaranteed that Ukraine will not be invaded again. That's basically the most important thing, the guarantee that other countries are involved and can defend Ukraine. In the event that there is a temptation to take more Ukrainian territory, things will get complicated, but at least there is apparently real progress on that issue. Everyone is moving their pieces and Putin is obviously moving his pieces. I think the meeting turned out to be more convenient for him than for Trump himself, and this, well, Trump didn't like it either. In the end, when you add and subtract everything, Putin has a slight gain from this last meeting, and Trump doesn't like that. He wanted to feel like the winner, the one who managed to have more influence, and apparently that didn't happen, at least for now. That way, there won't be any chance that Trump will have him launch them if he doesn't come to an agreement. I mean, Marco Rubio has issued a strong warning right now saying that if Russia doesn't reach a peace agreement with Ukraine, there will be sanctions and they will be very tough. This stance, without a concrete announcement but with the intention of putting pressure on Putin, shows that Marco Rubio is also not happy. Also with this meeting. They give the impression that the next sanctions should not only come from the United States but also from NATO. In other words, the NATO countries. Sanctioning not only Russia, but also the countries that are helping Russia, China, Iran, and so on. It couldn't be India, it could be South Korea, it could be Turkey. Even those who are friends and are part of NATO. So this would be a very different step. It would basically be a step toward total isolation of Russia. What about countries that don't join the alliance? What might happen to them? It could be that they are also left isolated, with whatever economic consequences that may bring. The thing here is that what's coming is more pressure for Putin, but also more pressure for Zelensky, so that he decides quickly and this doesn't get stuck in the middle. According to Steve Witkoff, Trump's advisor on this issue, a preliminary agreement was reached with Putin on robust security guarantees, which isn't exactly clear what he means by that. They talk about 5 not very well defined regions, so the supposed agreement is very ambiguous. Basically what I think is that Putin came to see to buy some time and to stick to his strategy and plan without any changes. To keep attacking Ukraine just hours later, after the meeting, a series of significant attacks on civilian areas in Ukraine took place, so this doesn't really change much either. On the other hand, the French president, Emmanuel Macron, confirmed that he will accompany Zelensky. Macron says that Europe must present itself with a clear and questioned voice. That's not what Macron says. He says, there is only one state that proposes peace, which would be a capitulation, says Russia. In other words, only Russia is asking for peace, but by surrendering its own flesh. Well, that's not going to happen. That's not how it's going to be. At least that's what Macron says. Ursula von der Leyen clarifies territorial integrity is not negotiable. Keir Starmer, the German Chancellor's representative, says that giving in to aggression only breeds more aggression. Macron insists there can be no European security debates if Europeans do not have to be in Europe, by Roche. And so, well, a series of comments that have been made in the last few hours, not in the last few days. It's only Sunday right now during this broadcast, but from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and tomorrow, Monday, there are important developments happening that could maybe push this conflict a little closer to a resolution or make it even more stagnant. Because if this doesn't work, the problem is that it could become even more stuck in a harsher and more serious way. And one detail that I found very interesting is that Marco Rubio assures that they are not going to force Ukraine to give up territory. He says, "The United States will not force Ukraine to give territory to Putin," assures the United States Secretary of State during a National Broadcasting Company interview. So the journalists were asking if they had discussed the issue of transferring land to the regions of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, Zaporizhia, etc. under the control of the Russian leader Vladimir Putin, some of them under Russian control, others not. And Rubio responded that the Ukrainians are not willing to make such concessions and that they don't intend to force them. Nor do they have the right to do so, nor are they going to do it, says the same Secretary of State. I found the response interesting. On the other hand, let me tell you that among the things I found very important about this tweet, Kailas, who maintains that it's clear why she is in charge of Europe's foreign relations with the world. No, so what she says is that we are going to go as the Chancellor of Europe, so to speak. She states that Russia clearly does not show any sign of wanting to end the war and continues to attack civilians. When you sit down to negotiate, how are you going to negotiate? And with the same person? It's like, you're fighting with fists and then you sit down to calm things down and talk. While sitting, you keep hitting the other person and say, "Yes, I want to talk," but continue hitting. So they ask, "So you don't want to talk?" There's no negotiation, there's no real idea or interest in negotiating. And that's something that is, it's real, it's what's happening. The European bloc's High Representative, Kaja Kallas, says the Kremlin aims to prolong the conflict. That's the real intention behind all of this, and they keep going around in circles, when the only intention is to extend the conflict for the interests that Putin has in this matter. It's just that right now, from Friday until today, until this very hour, since the day of the summit, against Putin, at this moment, Russia has carried out 500 attacks against Ukraine. Russia has launched more than 500 attacks against Ukraine. After the Trump-Putin meeting, what does this mean? Well, it means he doesn't want to negotiate. What he wants is more conflict, more war. Is it that clear? The Kremlin's offensive, which just hit 10 different locations, includes airstrikes and drone attacks. Russian troops launched an attack within the last 24 hours a day after President Donald Trump met with Vladimir Putin. 505 attacks against 10 towns in the Zaporizhia region. This was reported by the military administration of the area, Ivan Fedorov, on his own Telegram account, in which they also talk about other attacks such as towards Peroprevosenka, Nonovodilinka, Mala, Tokomanche, and Viloria. In addition, 743 drone attacks were recorded. Apart from this, separately, notice that in Serbia yesterday I mentioned to you about these massive protests that are taking place. What does the president of Serbia do instead of negotiating or reaching an agreement? Well, no. What he promises is a heavy hand against the protests, and he makes his speech even tougher. Basically, he threatens. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić announced strict measures against anti-government protesters on Sunday, after the situation in which he claims that the protests are an attack from the West, that it's terrorism, that it's this, that it's 1,000 things. He didn't present any evidence, but for these presidents, that's not important. So that's the situation now. Notice that in a few more seconds, the next video will play automatically if you're watching live. If not, just go to the channel and the next broadcast is there. See you there, and see you at night too when we'll have the day's summary. Astrid and I are here talking with you. Thank you so much. We'll see you in a little while. See you later.